Hello, we live. I am sitting here finishing up this page. News and YouTube playing in the background. Oops, I need that other interface. Media. Oh. That's better. Yeah, almost done here.
Well, as I promised, if we did another video, you'd have to stay tuned to see what the test results were if we kind of changed the experiment. If you didn't see the other video, we actually did an experiment with these dust collectors, and we used 150 pounds of flour to determine whether they work or not. And at the end of that video, I still had a question mark whether or not the dust collectors worked, because I feel like I sucked up too much flour. Okay, and of course, I'm not using sawdust because that kind of makes sense. I want to use something that's super fine. It's probably going to plug the vacuum stuff. I think that's kind of intuitive in this process. So what we're doing today is we're going to redo this experiment. And you guys who've been watching that video had some really great comments. A lot of you suggested doing smaller amounts of flour and then checking the filter more often. I totally agree. So let's kind of walk through what we're going to do today as an experiment, and then stay tuned. We'll have to see what happens. So to try to make the last test as valid as possible, we have 3 brand new vacuums and we had 3 brand new filters. But today we're going to be using, well, used filters, but they were only used for the last test. I've done my best to try to clean the
Hello, one person.
chalk out of these things, but
Welcome to the inking.
I guess you'll have to just make a decision about whether you trust the results of today's experiment.
I need to look at
Conclusive, I've mixed up the chalk colors.
Dust clouds for a second. I don't need to type for a second, just need to look at it for a second. What makes them distinct? Not much, just clouds basically. Yeah, L.
All are under $100 and can be bought online.
I think what I'll do, there we go, go in the direction of, and in fact, think it out. Yeah.
We chose their package deal, which includes the pre-cut lid, bucket, and the casters. Finally, we have the dust stopper. It includes the dust collector and a hose. You'll have to provide the bucket. Assembling each dust collector can be done with very basic tools, and it takes less than 15 minutes.
BYOB, bring your own bucket.
Larger wet dry vacuums with 2 or 2.5-inch hoses. I think we're getting really close to starting this experiment. So we got the grounding wire set up. We followed the instructions of the Dust Deputy. And
yes.
I am really curious to see if this makes a big difference. A lot of people commented that they wanted to see a control in this experiment, and I totally agree. So we've set up a 4th vacuum that's got just the filter in there, and there's no dust collection on that. So if you watch the other video, you're going to know that we put pound markings on these containers. We started with 50 pounds of flour because I thought it was a really good round number, and it turns out that's a ridiculous amount of flour. So a lot of people commented they wanted to see us try 5 pounds at a time and stop and check the filters. I think that's a great idea. I think we should have done that the last time. So let's start there. We'll just do 5 pounds of each, and then we'll stop and inspect the filters and see what they look like. All right, let's start with the dust stopper. Well, the hair on my arms is already standing up, so that's not a good sign. Oh, there's a shock. There's another one. That does not feel good. All right, this is the dust deputy. Ah, ow. All right, that's probably close enough. Maybe the washer didn't show up to work today, but it's totally static in this hose, and you can kind of hear the little sparks or whatever they are. And this is the dust right. This one so far has been better. I haven't been shocked nearly as much yet. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's stop there. Let's see if we overfilled this time. I have a hunch we did not. Oh yeah, not even close. So there's a very small amount in the bucket, and that's the dust stopper. So let's take a look at the vacuum and see what it looks like.
I work when I work, man. Do. It is what it is.
On the filter for sure. Even though this was a red filter, it's turning it blue. So there's some getting by, but it's definitely not nearly as much as when we did the other test. So I'm not convinced yet. So let's move on to the dust deputy. All right, dust deputy this time. Let's see how much we got in the bin. And same thing, a lot less. Definitely quite a bit on the top there. So yeah, we probably got pretty close to 5 pounds in that one. Let's see what the dust deputy filter looks like. The inside of the vacuum, I would say there's
I need to get my
flour here. And there's definitely flour on the filter, but I wouldn't say
I want to
it's about the
do.
same. I'd say it's about the same as dust stopper. But the inside of the vacuum definitely looks good. So far, pretty consistent. We're definitely not getting nearly as much flour in the vacuums as our other tests. And finally, the dust right. Probably sucked up a little bit more on this one, maybe like 6 or 7 pounds. This one did this the last time. There was a tremendous amount of flour on the lid, which made me instantly skeptical that the vacuum would be empty. So we've only sucked up maybe 7 pounds, and this thing's only about 3 inches full. Let's see what the vacuum looks like. The vacuum's looking pretty clean inside. There's not a lot of dust in here, just a little bit. I would say there's less than the dust deputy. And the filter, it's about the same. This one actually has a little bit less, maybe. There's a little less on the one side. So on the side where the vacuum actually shoots in, there's a little bit more. So pretty consistent, I would say, so far. So let's keep going. Maybe go to 10 pounds and then do another check. All right, dust deputy round 2. Ow! Oh, wow. Ow. Ow. Wow. All right, that's probably good enough for that one. All right, let's see what we got with the dust stopper for volume. Oh yeah, we're probably about double, maybe not quite double what we had before. Let's see what the filter looks like. All right, vacuum's getting a little bit more in the bottom. Definitely some kind of accumulating in the bottom of the vacuum, and then it's getting to definitely be more on the filter. The filter actually is completely covered, and we're only like a quarter of that bucket, that 5-gallon bucket. So I guess I'll let you guys be the judge of whether this experiment is more accurate or not. We definitely have not overflowed the bucket yet, and I would say we're definitely getting accumulation in the vacuum. Is the filter plugged yet? No, not yet. All right, dust deputy's turn. Yeah, we got a little bit more in this one than we have in the dust stopper. Quite a bit on the lid. Yeah, there's quite a bit more building up in the bottom of this vacuum too. There's quite a bit in here. I mean, enough I can hold it in my hand. And the filter's definitely covered. So we're only a little over a quarter in the bucket, and our filter's already covered, and we're already starting to get accumulation in the vacuum on the dust deputy. And finally, the dust right. We're probably less than a quarter of this bin, and there's still a lot on the lid. which always makes me nervous, but whatever. So this one's actually the cleanest so far. There's no real accumulation in the bottom. There's not really anything I can pick up. And I'd say the filter is also the cleanest of them all so far, which kind of goes with the fact that the bin's not as full, but none of the bins are full by any means. Ow. 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 Ow.
3. Using a number 3.
Final test on the dust stopper. We're about halfway on the bucket, and ironically, the lids look pretty clean. I mean, there's really not nearly the amount on the lid as there is on the other ones, for what that's worth. Well, there's definitely, like, we're getting some in the bottom of the bin finally, and the filter's definitely covered. I mean, it's pretty thick. Is it plugged up? No, but there is a lot of flour on that filter. So is some getting by? Yes. Is it plugging the filter? No. But I think that's where the control is going to become helpful, is to figure out whether this flour will even really plug.
What was I doing with that hand again? That's okay. So
say that there's a bit of irony here that this vacuum has, with the instructions, this like anti-static foil thing, and of all the things that electrocute me the most or shock me the most, it's this thing. It's the one that's actually got instructions on how to deal with it. So maybe it's the chalk, maybe it's the dust collection. I don't know. All right, we're same here, right at about half. That makes me feel good. So it's a fair comparison with our media. I would say the filter is definitely covered, just as much as the dust stopper. And then in the bin, we have, oh yeah, there's definite quantity in the vacuum, and we're not overfilling the dust deputy at all. So I would say that on this test, I'm really skeptical that overfilling the bin on the last test is what caused the filter to have so much on it. I would argue that this is just natural for these devices, that there's going to be a certain amount of bypass. Is it going to clog your filter? Probably not. And finally, dust right. Ironically, this one is the one that shocked me the least. And this thing isn't even close to full. It's well below a quarter. The same amount of debris on top. That really hasn't changed all along with the test. It seems like that stayed pretty consistent. And again, this bin is looking pretty tidy in the bottom. There's really not much accumulation. I can't really pick up anything out of the inside of the bin. And I would say that the filter is the cleanest, probably twice as clean as the others. So again, this bin's obviously not as full. That could be the problem here. I'm not really sure, or the reason there's not as much, but there's definitely the reality that this one is doing a better job of keeping stuff out of the vacuum. I think it's obvious that this stuff works. I'm still not convinced that we screwed up the last test. I am convinced that we probably overfilled the bucket, but I'm not sure by how much. So it's obvious to me that the dust deputy is letting more flour through.
do I do conventions? No, not very often. Well, so yeah, I do some. Do I have the sound turned off? Shouldn't there be like a sound when people? I don't want community highlights.
Can we even plug up a vacuum that doesn't have a dust collector? So let's try that now. So let's start with the orange bin. It looks like we've got about 30 pounds of flour left in the orange bin. So we'll start here. If we run out of flour, we'll move on to the next color. And if we get plugged up, we'll stop and try to figure out about how much.
Left chat. You don't happen to know how to turn on the little alerts? Anyway, conventions. Not so much. I do local shows, and for me, that's Montreal and Toronto mainly. And then sometimes I go a little further abroad, but I have not gone very far. And if I do travel a bit, like I've been to BC for a comic show, but that was for VanCaf, so Vancouver Comic Art Festival. And I would say generally festivals are more my preferred environments. So if I'm going to pay for the trip, I have to stay somewhere or find somewhere to crash. I worked at a through a friend, found a connection to someone who would put me up who was volunteering at the festival. And it was great. I don't enjoy Comic Cons. I don't sell as much at them either. So if I'm going to justify the trip, I'd rather go somewhere where my books, there are more people interested in my books. And I find that I do better at kind of book fairs and festivals and less superhero and fandom dominated markets, basically. That's what it comes down to.
Like some way to shock yourself handy because you're gonna get shocked like crazy. So there was another question that was asked.
Strap goes here. He's got a ding.
If there's other questions that would be really tough, like changing the media, what if we put like copier toner or gypsum dust or
this comes down.
I think the conclusion we've come to is that flour won't plug the vacuum, which we didn't know that before because we didn't have the control. The question that I think is doable for us today is what happens if you hook these things in series? So what we need to do is get everything cleaned up and we can hook these to each other and let's just kind of test and see how much each one collects and whether the vacuum is sparkling clean at the end or whether some of it still gets through.
There it is.
All right, so I did the best I could, quick and dirty style, to clean all the dust.
Geometrical shapes that will be recognizable as the box at a distance.
To do this test, we've decided that we're going to start the test with the dust stopper. That's going to be the first place that the flour is going to go, and then it's going to go to the dust deputy, and then finally to the dust right. We concluded from the previous test that the dust right was doing the best job of separating things out, so we think making this end will be fair. And then if anything gets to the vacuum, it's going to be this guy's fault. I did clean the vacuum as best I could to the filter, so we're not starting with a new filter. We're just kind of doing everything we can do. I did have to clean the vacuum with water, so I really, really hope we don't get any flour in there because that's going to suck the thing. So the last test we did with this vacuum was the orange flour. So we're going to use the blue flour this time. That way we can kind of confidently say what got to the vacuum. Sort of realizing that if I hold this crevice tool is when I'm getting shocked, but if I hold back here, for some reason I don't get shocked as much. Yeah, we're getting quite a bit in the dust stopper, so a little bit more. Getting pretty full. Let's maybe go about there. We'll call that good. Looks like it was pretty close to about 20 pounds. I don't know, maybe 18 pounds or something of flour. All right, the first line of defense is, yeah, there's probably at least 12 pounds of flour in there. It's pretty clean, so that's good. So the real question is, what's in the next bin? Uh-oh. Oh, there's a little in there. Definitely some in the bottom. And the dust stopper is nowhere near full. So that's definitely finding its way through.
Oh, yeah, I should...
Last stop before it hits the vacuum.
Okay.
Whoa, that's clean. There's nothing in there. I mean, there's a little film, but that's pretty good. Final stop.
Quick.
I mean, there's a little bit there. Actually, all
text posting. Oh, well, you know what? I'm so close to being done. That's just silly. Never mind. Never mind. Focus.
So I would say the answer for flour is
so
stop flour. I don't think you even need the third one, and nothing in the vacuum at all. So we know that there's a certain amount getting through the dust stopper. we feel like there's hardly anything getting through the dust deputy, which kind of doesn't make sense because in the previous experiment, the dust deputy seemed to be the one that performed the worst. So I think we should do just a quick test. We should skip the dust stopper and we'll just vacuum straight into the dust deputy, and then we'll check the dust right, and then we'll check the vacuum, and that should give us a fairly conclusive idea about how much each one of these is stopping when we run them in series. All right, that's pretty good. Let's try that. Okay, one thing we have to all agree on is that this is horrifyingly impractical. So if you're going to go with the whole dust collector and series thing, you're going to want a bigger shop. So we only got about maybe 6 pounds in there. It seemed like we had sucked up quite a bit more than that, but so there's definitely some getting past the dust deputy. I think this one's proven more than once that stuff definitely gets by. So in the series test, it seems like we can say so far that the one that seems to perform the best is the dust right. In the singular test, both the dust stopper and the dust deputy were letting some by, and the dust right so far has proven that it's let the least by. I guess we could check the vacuum really quick and see if there's anything in here. Uh-oh. There's a little bit. It's not much. There's definitely a little bit. Yeah, you can see in the vacuum that there's a little bit there. So, man, I don't know. That's a really tough one. When I say that it did the best, I say that it let the least amount through, not that it didn't let any through. Well, guys, I feel like today was a much more conclusive test. I feel like we kind of proved that we did some things that maybe didn't make the test as convincing the last time. There's definitely some things that we learned from these, in this test. The dust right seems to be doing a great job. We can say conclusively that when you hook them in series, they definitely do get progressively better, although it's really debatable about which one passes more to the other. I can almost say for a fact that these grounding washers are a chuckle, but I did learn that if you don't grab the crevice tool, but you grab kind of the cup of the hose, the shocking is much, much less. So take that for what it's worth. And the answer to the dust collection question, I don't know if I can say conclusively that these things work. I guess the answer that we came up with today is that flour does not clog the filter on these wet-dry vacuums. So we would need to try this test, I guess, again with a different media, something that will for sure clog the vacuum to decide whether the amount of stuff that these systems are bypassing is acceptable or not. Of course, there were people in the comments who were saying, oh, mine works fantastic. Well, it's very subjective. I guess you would need to try all three, and I guess we would need to try an equivalent media to make sure that we're being fair in our testing. I guess for me, I'm still not completely sold. I ended the last video with, I'll let you guys decide, and I guess I'm still there. I'm not completely sold on these yet. I haven't had a chance to put a bunch of really fine dust, wood dust or anything, sheetrock dust or anything through them. Maybe when I get a chance to do that, it'll start to really show which ones work and which ones don't. In the last video's comments, there were a few people, I'll say more than a few people, who were super concerned that we were wasting a perfectly good food material. So we've come up with a recipe for you folks. We'll leave that in the description below. We hope you enjoy it. If you try it, let us know how it turns out. Half a cup wheat flour, 6 eggs, half a cup of milk, and syrup. Okay, yeah, we can do that.
DNA, we're hardwired to do it. We know this because humans as young as fetuses in utero touch their faces. And every time you tell yourself, stop touching your face, don't touch your face, if I touch my face I'm going to get really ill, telling yourself to do something that is entirely unnatural to you. When we touch our faces, what we're really doing is calming ourselves down. When we touch certain areas of our faces, what we're really doing is we're activating certain pressure points, which then activate something called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the thing that makes us calm ourselves down internally. See the same response in dogs and cats. Children often model the same behavior as their parents. See how our parents, when they're shocked, they touch their faces, or when they're surprised, they touch their faces, or if they're upset, they touch their faces. We're muscle like exactly the same thing. The irony is, at a time when it's more important than ever to not touch your face, so your unconscious mind will prompt your hand to go straight to your face.
Usually, before I start erasing, especially when I've done some whiteout work, I use light at angles to check for wet spots. So I'll just avoid this, which means I make my eraser rolling pin the right length to just to the inside of this panel. I can overlap that way a little bit if I need to. And so you get a good look at before. I really don't need to get rid of all the color because I am scanning the art, and the remainder is easily removed with just contrast and color replace in Photoshop or the equivalent in some other program. You can clean it right up. But this lightens it enough that I can now look and see if what I've done works. I don't have interfering. So the other thing I do is dab. So I'm not rubbing. I like jabbing at the paper with it. And that sort of pushes it into crevices and more ground in pigment. Helps get the darker mark out. Again, without rubbing. So it's nothing, it lifts some ink. There's nothing you can do that won't lift any ink. It will not lift any ink. More like that. But that does much less. And so there we go. To be continued, but all done. I need to actually do some hatching and clean up. I still have to actually do the wall there, so let's not get ahead of myself. But it is exciting because this is another part of Mind Engines. So I'm using the curvature of my wrist to get a repeatable gentle arch. And I'm twisting the paper to change the angle subtly for perspective. Yep. And now all this, that's going back the most well lit. I think smaller pen. That's my 5. Go to my 3.
People talking about their personal experiences with relationships and awful rooming houses and mental health and disability, and a lot of those comics helped me get through a lot of really difficult times in my life. And I worked in bookstores and libraries, and I was always frustrated with the way
watching
I wasn't able to find the comics that I wanted to find.
YouTube, and this is a very interesting interview at the Toronto Comics Library.
Organized in bookstores and libraries as well, as is an all-encompassing genre rather than a medium for telling stories, as we spoke about a little bit. And so,
I don't know how much of that you guys can hear. I have it turned down, so I don't have problems with the algorithms.
yeah, and so we got together in the springtime of 2018. We pulled our collections together. I was cataloging comics from home, just surrounded by piles of comics, and created the database for Canadian cartoonists.
Yes, which is on the site.
Yes.
Which is gorgeous, by the way. How many, I guess cartoonists, comic artists, I'll say artists, I suppose, aren't actually right now in the database?
So
Roughly.
I think it's over. I think it's a big update to try and include more Indigenous creators and Toronto cartoonists. But I think we have over 600 now, and it includes letterers, pencilers, inkers, writers, artists, and there's a few indie publishing Canadian companies in there as well.
So it's not just strictly artists; it's almost from like inception, creation, the actual work of creating the comic to publication, the whole industry.
Yeah,
Let's change my angle. There we go. We'll just use that other one for darker bits. I want my angle to reflect on the ground here the direction of the light. Shading perspective hack. So that was.
Talk to creators, look at the that library because I really wanted to include people who self-published as well.
Yeah,
it's really important because often people don't have. There's some really amazing stores that have these on consignment in Toronto, like the Beguiling and Page Channel.
Yes, Beguiling is a rather good selection. You can walk right in on the way.
Yeah, they're amazing. So there are spaces that exist that have independent creators work, but often people are only posting their comics on Instagram and only selling them at zine fairs. So I really wanted to make sure that there was a space to make those areas more accessible as well. And I guess I should have mentioned, like, the goals of the project when we started were trying to make comics more accessible to people through the way we organize them in the library space and through showcasing narratives that are underrepresented in other spaces, like comics made by marginalized creators. They're not as visible in the mainstream industry.
Doodly doo.
That was part of the reason why.
Almost done. Making decisions about the light and shadow, carving my space up.
Oftentimes you're struggling to find marginalized creators, female creators, women creators, sort of health and stuff like that. You also got a master's in library sciences and literature, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've got that right. Now, obviously you've sort of got the maelstrom to create this place together, where you've got the education, you've got the experience, and also the reasoning and the drive.
The maelstrom.
When it comes to,
it's a weird way to talk about it, but okay.
What is it in this library you started functionally? How is it different? And how are you correcting for those harder to see or harder to find?
Personally, I also want to preface this with none of us are professional catalogers. We're all sort of taking a DIY experimental approach to organizing comics because the way they've traditionally been organized in libraries is they are organized on the shelf sort of all together as sort of one subject or genre.
So for instance, you mentioned fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, the chapters, and then comics.
You might have, like, on the shelf in the comics section, there could be like a sci-fi comic wide range of subjects and narratives in comics, and that they're really a medium for telling any sort of story, and they can be created in a variety of mediums, like line of text or watercolor or different printmaking, inking, and yeah. So we really so I can tell you a bit about the subject breakdown that we chose for this. Like we have everyday fiction, which are narratives that are sort of everyday stories in the time of or like life.
Yeah.
We have historical fiction, which can kind of cross over with everyday fiction. So for this catalog, you really have to kind of take a look
That works.
and figure out what would be the best space
Nicely.
to find the narratives that they're looking for. So historical fiction are narratives.
I love it when a plan comes together. That's not the right voice at all. I can't hear voices in my head though, so I can't remember right now. I kind of know what he sounded like, but I love it. I love it when I plan. I remember like a gravel, but I wish I had that auditory hallucinatory effect that so many people seem to enjoy. Hear shit in your head would make imitation a lot easier. I always sucked at impersonations. I mean, it's not like I ever tried to be a professional or something, but just even trying casually. And that would be partially why. Here.
As I mentioned before, we're kind of taking a DIY approach to this, and based on community feedback and volunteer feedback, we might change those categories over time as well. So none of us are professional catalogers, but we just really want to create a taxonomy that'll make those narratives more accessible and kind of serve as a case study for how comics could potentially be cataloged different in mainstream classification systems.
Well done.
Like libraries, Congress, because they're often outdated and don't really.
It is not a commission. This is for a story. I've got a backlog of commissions, so my commissions are closed at the moment. And this may go on sale once I've finished doing the story. This is the first of 8. So this is the 8th of the first 8 pages. And it's coming out in Mind Engine. It's called The Box. And you'll find the links for more about that in the description text of this video, which I'm going to end in a couple minutes at 40 minutes, I think. And this will be published in May. So that's when you can buy it. You can buy a copy digitally or in print of Mind Engine, probably in mid to late May. We'll see. I'm going to have physical copies for festivals in May for sure. That's like the first run. But then I'll be putting it up. The book will be up on Kindle Direct. So that's Kindle and Amazon and all that stuff, print on demand. I'll also have it on Comixology eventually and through Gumroad. And you'll be able to buy digital or print copies, Francisco. Is that cool? I hope you enjoyed. This is nice. I'm going to look at it again in a minute, and then it's got to get scanned and I have to do the lettering. But then I am done. Another one. It leaves me 2 stories left to do for Mind Engine in the next 30 or so days. Thanks for watching, folks. Go check out my Patreon, patreon.com/salgood. And if you pledge, you'll get digital copies of all my books right away, all my self-published indie books. There's a library you get access to, a whole bunch of stuff. And then also, if you stick around long enough, eventually, especially with the new Mind Engine books, which will be black and white, much more affordable for me, I'll start sending them to people who've just been pledged after they've cured a certain amount. I ain't giving away how much it is. I gotta keep you. I gotta hook you in. But you do get like, so you get to read all my comics. You help me make my comics. If my Patreon went high enough, I could probably stop all part-time work and just work on this stuff all the time. And I would love that. I used to do comics full-time at Marvel in the 90s and DC in the late 90s, and Marvel and DC a little bit both, of course, also in the early aughts, but not much after that. I moved away from doing commercial work for hire stuff to doing personal work, but I just assumed that would mean most of it wouldn't be for money, it'd be for myself. So that's what most of this is. This is entirely for myself. I've made kind of weird compromises just in the process of growing as an artist along the road, and trying to find my way to doing work that is just purely of me. And that's what I'm doing right now. So if you were to head to the Patreon, this is for a story I'm working on for the beginning. That's a good one. It's a good spot to end on. The beginning of Mind Engine, but also was commissioned initially for an anthology that's coming out at MCAF, which I'll be at in May, assuming the coronavirus hasn't killed us all. I will be selling my books. I'm probably going to be tabling with an old friend of mine, Michelle Verana. So we're going to share a table, and I'll have Mind Engines, and I'll have Revolver 1 and 0, and Dream Life, and art. So if you want to buy my art, Francisco, if you happen to be in Montreal in May, come on by MCAF in Parc La Fontaine. And I think that's probably going to be like my next show. TCAF, maybe. I'm on a waiting list for a table for TCAF in Toronto. That's early May. And I'm not betting that I'm going to get it, but I'm hoping that I will. So I might be at TCAF, but I'm not sure. I'm aiming to try to get this book finished for it. And I'm on track. This could be a tight squeeze, but I'm on track to hit that deadline. And if it all goes well, I'll probably do like a launch video. Yeah. I'm going to do some more live streaming of other parts of the process. I've got to figure out how to stream my Photoshop work, if that works. And I'm going to, for the next 2 weeks, because of the shutdown, I figured I've been meaning to do this for a while. I'll try to live stream every day, at least once. So see you next time. Maybe even in a couple of hours, I figured I'm doing next. And thanks for watching. Go like, share, subscribe, all of those things. And the patreon.com/Salgood does good. Also, Gumroad, Spilt Ink at Gumroad. It's my imprint. All my books are there. Links are in the doobly-doo texty thingy down below, down here, over there. Isn't it like over? My screen's backwards. Oh, it's confusing. So down is down, but if I want to say subscribe over there, it's like that, right? I don't know. See ya.